We are live, so cool. So welcome back to Standouts, everyone that's tuning in. The reason these kicked off was I was having cool conversations with people out in the world, and I thought, man, wouldn't it be cool if someone or people could just tune in and listen and learn from the amazing people that I get to connect with. And so thanks for tuning in. You're just kind of gonna listen in and enjoy the conversation. Today, I'm sitting with Chris Schembra. I met Chris via Brett Riley, who I've worked with for the last 10 years or close to 10 years at this point. And Chris is a phenomenal guy. He's done some really cool things with the time that he's had on Earth, and it's just really neat. So anyway, we'll kind of get into it, but the idea is we're going to talk about some of his strategy personally, as well as in the companies that he's been a part of. And what it kind of the way he thinks about it, what's unique about his approach, what's different about the books he's written or the book he's about to release, which is exciting. And so we're probably going to talk about some of that stuff as well. So it should be great. But Chris, thanks again. Do you want to start with just a little bit of a background? Who are you? Where are you from? Where are you at now? That'd be awesome.
Sure. My name's Chris. Hey, everybody. I won't give the professional resume. You can find that stuff on the Google. But from a personal perspective, I grew up as an only child on Hilton Head Island, South Carolina. I had two loving parents who had a couple companies of their own. So I was instilled with entrepreneurship at a young age. I had the privilege of growing up around some pretty cool people. I grew up on Hilton Head Island, South Carolina, where there was always an influx of athletes and business people and educators and wonderful community leaders that I could learn from. And so I had a pretty good childhood, moved away to college down in Florida, got kicked out of college after my sophomore year, shipped off to rehab in Utah and Washington and Los Angeles for a long time, and then ended up living on a glacier at the southern tip of the world in Patagonia, South America for a couple months with Josh's friend or co-founder Brett, who introduced us here together. And then I ended up becoming a boat captain and opening up a few of my own companies, and then made it up here to New York City. So I'm a guy who had to learn at a young age pretty quick how to meet new people, how to tell stories and advocate for whatever I was trying to sell, whether it was, getting people to fall in love with our island, whether it was me as a tour guide or a boat captain, or funneling leads to my dad in his real estate business, the people I met on the beach while I was surfing. So I've always been good at telling stories and asking people questions and getting people out of their comfort zone, to fall in love with something and have emotional connection to something. And that's me in a nutshell. I'm miserable every other day. I've got a whole host of wonderful anxieties and insecurities, and I think they're the best part about me. They make me unique. They make me have some pretty interesting scars and stories on the resume, and I think it's given me resilience and self-confidence, and as well as a maniacal amount of doubt and insecurity, and it helps me connect with people. So yeah, glad to be here today.
Yeah, that's good. That's good stuff. Well, a lot of the people tuning in here, I think in many ways know me, but I'll give my little background just because you don't know me super well at this point, Chris. I grew up here in Sheridan, Wyoming, northern Wyoming, and was really passionate about sort of entrepreneurship at a young age, and mowed some lawns, sort of did that on my own time. My dad always said, like, own your own thing, do your own thing, be your own boss, and it just kind of like, it wasn't like pushing it on me, but he just was encouraging me in that way. So when I was about 15, I skied from about 5th grade on, downhill skied. So 3 of my good friends, we just skied all the time. And then we bought a camera and decided we were going to make a ski movie. And so, yeah, my sophomore year of high school, we made a movie called Karma. My junior year was called Skis On, SKEEZ-ON, Skis On. And then the last one was called Last Run. And if you're familiar with ski culture at all, you never call your last run because, you know, you get hurt or whatever. Anyway, our last one was our last one. We never made another ski movie, but we have enough footage probably to make some sort of revival over the last 15 years. But anyway, with that pretty much lit a fire of this concept of cool people, cool projects, where I was just passionate about working with really awesome people I trusted and respected and believed in, and you know, people that felt the same way about me, I guess. And then I was more agnostic towards what it was I was working on. And so I think that's what gives me my serial entrepreneur aspects, is I don't really care what it is as long as I'm working with people that I trust. So from there, I got an ag econ degree from our local university down in Laramie, Wyoming. And then before I graduated, got married and started this business doing marketing work like 12 years ago. So we have 3 kids, 5, 3, and 1. So it's pandemonium at our house, which is pretty fun, but we love getting up to the mountains. You know, started Go Fast with Brett and Brady, and Brett started working with me before that on the marketing side. So anyway, that's kind of just a snapshot, Chris. So if any questions you might have for me as we kind of go through this, feel free. But
I have one.
yeah, go for it.
Well, I always have a lot. You said that you like working with people you trust and respect. What quality do you most admire in another person that isn't on that success chart behind you?
What qualities? I really appreciate candor, I think, a lot. Just the ability to talk about the hard stuff and to recognize that maybe something isn't going well and just bring it up. Let's just talk about it. I'm a very forgiving person in the sense of, like, if someone messes up and is like, I messed that up, I shouldn't have done it that way. You know, I'm like, cool, great. You're forgiven. Let's move on. Let's put it in the past. Let's put it behind us. Like, I just don't like I don't like people who do double jeopardy, and I don't like to do it at all. You know, it's just like, you don't need to pay for your sins more than once, if you will, you know, in that way. It's like, we talk it out. That's enough. Let's hash it out. Let's apologize and go beyond, you know? So candor.
The ability to have the hard chats.
Yeah.
To be a forgiving person.
Yeah. To move beyond it. Because failure is just baked into progress. Failure is just a part of trying things, you know? Like, I think of my passion for, we always did science fair as kids. Did you do science fair growing up ever, or was that?
Oh, yeah.
Curriculum? Okay, cool. So I love science fair because, and really to me, science fair and entrepreneurship are the same thing. You know, you have a hypothesis, you set up an experiment, you have a control, you change a variable, you run the experiment, you observe it, you make a conclusion, and then you change your hypothesis and you do it again, you know, that iteration. And so, yeah, with that, it's like, if you're going to test something, you have to be okay if it doesn't work, you know, because that's the point, you know, it's just, you're testing stuff. So
you got a lot of stuff floating around that brain.
Yeah.
Look at the smile on your face when you, what do you giggle about when you hear that?
Oh, I don't know. Yeah. I spend a lot of time thinking, you know, just processing stuff, trying to take in the world and make sense of it. And, you know, like, I really love connecting people. So, you know, like the Rolodex, the people in my phone, I have like 3,500 people in my phone, I think. And I would say half of them are like SEO'd for like certain reasons, you know, like where I met them, how I met them. Like, if you just look at the names, some of them are like this long with like parentheses and dashes. And so I can always like search. I'm like, I met this guy when I was in Washington. I'll type in Washington and be like, yeah, there he is. He was the barber that was in this town, and he was really passionate about motorcycles and this and that or whatever. And then I can hit him up, be like, hey, my friend's coming to town. Like, you guys need to, you know, like, wow. I just love that stuff, you know? So I don't know. I just love thinking about how I can connect people. And it's a fun part of it's the funnest part of my.
It really lights you up. I mean, I hope you go back and watch just how much joy was on your face when you're talking about that stuff.
I appreciate you saying that. That's cool.
Some of my most prideful moments are when I go to my email and I go to the search the search bar in my email and I type quote Chris connecting end quote, which means that only search for the combination of Chris and connecting right next to each other. And whatever happens after it, Chris connecting dinner attendees, or Chris connecting Bob and Paul, or Chris connecting whatever, 2,500 search results pop up. 2,500 different times I've gone to the email and said, yeah, this is a good idea. Chris connecting Bob and Phil. Have fun.
Yeah.
Of course, one of the things that we have to keep in mind is people who love connecting people. Do you ever do the double opt-in intro? So the double opt-in intro, Brett's wife did it very well. Hannah did it very well the other day. She thought that it would be a great idea to connect me and the people that she works with. But what she did, instead of just saying, here, everybody, go into a pot together and let's hope something good happens, it was, hey, go to them. I'd like to introduce you to my friend Chris. Go to Chris. Hey, I'd like to introduce you to the people we work with. If both parties say yes, only then can you introduce people. The worst thing that can happen is when I get an email in the middle of my inbox when I'm in the middle of, I don't know, picking my nose or making ice cream, and someone's like, oh my God, you got to meet Phil. Here, Phil, meet Chris. He's great. And I'm like, picking my nose, and I'm like, what am I supposed to do with this? I don't have the time right now. I'm accidentally going to blow this person off for a couple weeks, and they're going to get really resentful.
Yeah.
You have to ask the person. So I don't know. We call it the double opt-in intro. Michael Roderick and David Home and his V Band are big proponents of that.
That's cool. That's cool. I would say I do that 95% of the time. There is 5% where I just like just my twitch of like, oh, you guys have to meet, you know?
But you know what, that 5% you're able to do because you've probably built up enough social capital to where people and are, you know, very excited to see Josh connecting. You know, it'd be one thing if you had low social capital and people didn't trust your connections, then they'd be like, oh, here comes Josh connecting to someone again. What do I got to do for this guy?
Yeah. What's the point here? What's going on?
You know, our connections, I guess this is a subtle or humble brag. The people, they've gone on to make literally hundreds of millions of dollars. We've tracked some of them. There's like a $50 million deal over here. Some people are chasing a $200 million deal. There's like stuff. So people know if there's going to be like a break from the double opt-in intro, and I'm just like, oh, Josh and Chris got to meet. Go. They probably trust it. And so the question to me in life is, what do we do to build up that social capital? Is it as simple as us having a, giving spirit with our connections, or does it also come from people knowing that you, like Josh, live in integrity? And therefore you wouldn't do something out of integrity. And therefore, if you're going to do something, it's likely going to be productive for both people.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's that track record that you can't, like, it does take time. You can have some really intense, good engagement with a person, like say a week-long leadership, whatever. Like you can be like, I did one of these a few years back. It was 1 week, all 40 of us were together, and we created some really cool relationships. But 6 months later, had I not talked to any of them, right, it wouldn't have been as powerful as if I would have connected with them over a beer or coffee or food or, whatever, at various intervals, which is like it's like a dose of like, hey, I care about you, you know, like, hey, I just met so-and-so. Some of it's introducing people, I think, but some of it's like, I came across this article. I thought it was really interesting. I remember 2 months ago, right? You're not necessarily saying 2 months ago, but I remember when we were last together, you had shared this interesting story about blank, blank, blank. And I thought this tied in, you know, I think you'll get some value by checking this out. It made me think of you in this spot, you know, whether they respond or whatever, like it's giving value and showing that you're trying to be a giver versus a taker, you know?
Yeah, I mean, Adam Grant wrote a wonderful book called Give and Take. He studied 2,600 sales professionals and tried to understand, you know, what made them successful. Were they takers? Like, were they just like leeches who just like took? Were they matchers? Were they like give and then take and give and then take? Or were they just givers? Right. And he found that the givers were the most successful people in the study because they just went out and gave. Now you got to give strategically. Like you can't just give until you can give no longer. Then you'll become the worst person or the least successful person on earth if you've given away everything. But if you give to the right people who are filled with integrity, it has a way of naturally coming back around. You know, it's interesting. You talk about those 40 people from the leadership group and meeting every couple months as kind of like a microdose of attention or you know, connection. Stanford University did a 44-page sociological study called The Strength of Weak Ties. And what they found actually is that vital information is best passed through a social network through a weak tie. So someone you only talk to once every couple months is more prone to refer you, to share information on behalf of you, to want to think about you than like your best friend. Like, no offense to my best friend, Scott, but I don't think I've ever gotten a freaking like business referral from him. Not that I'm looking for it. He's my friend.
Yeah.
But a weak tie that I might talk to twice a year has provided me lots of opportunity. You know, it's cool. We got the opportunity to write about that in our new book, you know, Gratitude Through Hard Times. And we actually found that, you know, to be grateful, our business is gratitude. We'll get there in a little bit, but to be grateful doesn't only mean being grateful for the immediate people in your life, but it can be the weak tie people, and you use gratitude as that tool to reach out to them once a year and say, you know what? I never mentioned how grateful I was that on the third day of our 7-day leadership retreat, you said this one specific sentence, and this is the benefit that I've derived from that sentence now 4 months later. Thank you, Josh. Thank you. That's reactivating a weak or dormant tie. And we talk about the science in the book and everything like that.
Yeah. Well, let's get into the book a little bit. So
I didn't mean for that to transition into, that's so funny, but it's funny. You know what? It's funny. So here's the weird thing. I was just flowing in the conversation and I was just referencing that study. And in a way, I was really excited to not be talking about the book. And then I realized, oh, fuck, we wrote about it. So it was great. I forget what we wrote about. You know, it's I forget what we wrote about.
No, it's awesome. Well, I did want to ask, and I hope I'm not putting you in the spot. Like, as I was preparing just for the 20 or 30 minutes before we got together, I want to just have stuff kind of fresh in my mind. And, you know, I actually, full disclosure, Chris asked me, or when we were talking about meeting together, he's like, hey, would you read my book? And I was working, Amelia was helping us. And I was like, yeah, for sure. I was like, I'll reread it. Cause I'd already bought his Gratitude and Pasta book. And I got the pasta sauce. I don't think I used the pasta sauce cause I wanted it as like an object, reference, you know, like in my kitchen, where I see it and think about it as opposed to using it. I don't know. It's funny, but,
well,
anyway,
there's a ton of sauce where that comes from, buddy. I'll ship you more sauce. That's awesome.
That's awesome. Well, so anyway, I reread that book because I was like, yeah, that would be great. I'd like to reread it, and so I did. And then I think it was like 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, I don't know, sometime. It's like, no, he has a new book that and I was like, oh, Okay, so I've not made it through that book yet.
Oh,
But
good.
I've made it through some, and I know we're going to touch on some of it today. And a lot of them are both books are on gratitude, and so it'll be fun to chat a little bit about it. But I did want to ask, as I was rereading this, I thought it'd be kind of fun to ask you the question that brought life back and maybe you don't get asked this enough, but I figured I'm going to ask you. So the key question is, if you could give credit or thanks to one person in your life, someone you don't thank enough, who would that be? So I wanted to ask Chris that.
If you could give credit or thanks to one person in your life that you don't give enough credit or thanks to, that you never thought to thank, who would that be? Pat Conroy, I think. So I was, I swiveled my chair, and I came across this wonderful, wonderful book, Where the Crawdads Sing, which was a huge book last year on the New York Times bestseller list. And it was praised for having a wonderful language. And the language in that book was so similar to the language of my favorite book ever that I'm trying to find so I can just read the introduction to the book. And I know the people that are seeing this on live are saying, what the hell is this guy doing? So, oh, of course it's right here. Okay, Pat Conroy, multiple New York Times bestselling author. He's from where I'm from in South Carolina. And he is a master of language. And, I grew up reading his books. I've read this book dozens and dozens and dozens of times. But I want to read the prologue just so I can tell you where romance first came into my life that I don't talk enough about. And I don't think I've ever covered this, ever. So here's the prologue. My wound is geography. It's also my anchorage, my port of call. I grew up slowly beside the tides and marshes of Colleton. My arms were tawny and strong from working long days on the shrimp boat in the blazing South Carolina heat. Because I was a wingo, I worked as soon as I could walk. I could pick a blue crab clean when I was 5. I had killed my first deer by the age of 7, and at 9 was regularly putting meat on my family's table. I was born and raised on a Carolina sea island, and I carried the sunshine of the low country inked in dark gold on my back and shoulders. As a boy, I was happy above the channels, navigating a small boat between the sandbars with their quiet nation of oysters exposed on the brown flats at the low water mark. I knew every shrimper by name, and they knew me and sounded their horns when they passed me fishing in the river, etc., etc. So the book, the language that I obsessed over since I knew how to read was the language in this book. It's like Michelangelo, painting the Sistine Chapel. That's what reading Pat Conroy is like. And, it taught me how to love. It taught me how to be a romantic. It taught me how to look at something and see the beauty in it. And I think as cynical of a writer as he is, as pessimistic of a person as he was, those things gave me optimism. It gave me optimism to find beauty in whatever's around me. I was just in New Orleans last Friday with Galen Hare. I was producing a dinner party over there for his group, and and on the way back on the plane, Yeah, I wrote a poem about New Orleans that I'd like to read.
Let's hear it.
New Orleans, sweaty, muggy, beautiful. Walking down the narrow corridors, every other street is a movable feast. Luscious tropical gardens grow in the footprints of Paris. The city of lights leaves a pungent reminder that this city was not birthed the American way. Outdoors on every veranda are just a footstep away from the ice machine. As one wanders through the streets, you feel two cities, one stuck in time, unable to shake the cobwebs of a slower and simpler. The other, the modern rush of Instagrammable balconies, last hurrahs, and a fallen artistic dream. Who lives here? Well, you have to stand the heat. You like when the hot summer rain forces us inside, shutters open, grooving to a 5-piece band. You hear that hum? That music keeps the city lively. It keeps families and communities together. Why leave? When groove and food run so prevalent, good times are easy to come and hard to leave. Feel the heat. And it's because, I wrote that poem, as Steve Tam calls me the poet. I wrote that poem after watching a documentary about Anthony Bourdain on the way down to New Orleans. And I realized that I felt Anthony Bourdain's death so much because he reminded me so much of a tortured Pat Conroy. And I grew up reading those books. So it's all linked. And, I'd like to step more into that romanticism more going forward, but I've never thought to thank Pat Conroy. He's an imperfect man. He writes very dark stories filled with rape and incest and war and hatred and love and all those things in between. And it's just proof, as our new book, proves, that you can find beauty through life's darkest hours. And I never knew the linkage of the two, and really until now. So
that's powerful. I particularly loved your the groove and food. I don't know if there's a better two words, and I haven't been to New Orleans yet, so I'm speaking a little out of turn, but in terms of their brand, like groove and food, you know what I mean? I couldn't pick two better words to just.
I got off the flight from New Orleans to New Orleans, and the literal there was literally a 5-piece band playing in the middle of the thing. It was amazing. I'm trying to find a wonderful passage. I'm proud of this this one passage, the diamond in the mine. Where is this? Anyways, serendipity, gratitude makes life worth living. The diamond in the mine. No.
Is this in your new book?
It's in the new book. It's no.
I found the word diamond on mine. That's page 22, but.
Oh, yeah. Wait. What?
I can search it, but.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Page 22
on a
of
PDF, on a PDF. So.
Oh, okay.
Right, of 100 of 200
Oh,
pages.
yeah. So this is probably my favorite line I've ever written that reminds me of Pat Conroy, or maybe a little bit about Mark Twain. True, deep, meaningful human connection is like a diamond. It lasts forever. Cultivating it, though, is hard. It requires courage, bravery, and unyielding vulnerability. But the shine through the mine erases the poverty of the soul. That's one of my favorite lines in the book.
That's cool. Is that the cover, or is that a working cover? That's a cover.
No, this is the book.
Nice.
This is the
Because I
book.
just have the PDF, you know.
Yeah, it's Sisyphus pushing the rock up the hill.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yep.
There's no meaning to it other than there's a lot of stoics in the book, but there's no real like meaning as to why he's the one, pushing up. But it it's good. It's a 320 page book. So it's nice. It'll come out on hardcover later in the year. It's printing right now. It just takes forever to print a hardcover right now, at least in an economical format. And luckily all our big keynotes around the book start up in the fall, so it'll be out there by there. But I mean, look, it's June 14th. I mean, technically it's live on Amazon right now.
Is it nice?
Kindle and paperback. The official launch date is June 21st. That's when all of my friends and families and corporate bulk buys will all be recorded. Our ebook launches officially, I should say, on June 19th. We hired a big firm out of Florida to run our bestseller campaign. And so their campaign revolves around our ebook, which will be going out to a great deal of people. So hopefully if their efforts are successful, it'll hit one of those, big lists that it's supposed to hit. And it will have come directly from the ebook campaign. Got good corporate bulk buys, companies, of variety of industries, variety of sizes that have done some kind of virtual gratitude experience with us over the last 3 years, have signed on to say, oh, so this explains what we did in the virtual gratitude experience. Okay, we're in. Some companies are just buying 200 books, some are buying 1,200 books. But we've got a lot of range of size companies and everything in between.
That's awesome. Well, I wanted to ask you on specific to this newest book, what do you think is one thing that you've, out of the process, what's like, I don't know, if you could put yourself like 20 years from now and you think back, like what's like the one thing you really learned, either about yourself or about the process or about like human, or just what's like, what do you think is going to be one thing that lasts, that, that you really think back to this moment?
I mean, there's a moment for me and then there's a moment for the other people. And I think they're actually interlocked. So I started writing. So for the readers, I'll take you guys on a journey. I'm a journeyman. We wrote our first book, and the first book launched April 7th, 2020. If you're not familiar with what that is, that's at the beginning of a global pandemic. And the book was about how to host an 18-person dinner that makes everybody cry. Kind of obsolete in the middle of a pandemic. Luckily, the corporate, corporate buyers would buy the book to go along with our virtual gratitude experience. But anyways, so, the world shut down and we had this book in our hands. It's like we had just spent all this money and we had nothing to show for it because the book tour and all the corporate book buys and all this shit just went, completely. And so I'm sitting there and I started developing this insecurity.
It sounds a little like a hard time.
It was a little like a hard time. It was a really hard time. I mean, let alone the hard time it took for us to pivot our company virtual, which then we did with absolute and stunning, ability. Very proud of our team for pivoting all of our experiences to virtual and really getting to serve literally hundreds of companies during the middle of their darkest hour. But I'm still holding up my book, Gratitude and Pasta. And it's like you're holding a baby, but nobody's met your baby. And what I mean by that is I hadn't seen a single person who owned my book that I didn't know in person because there was a pandemic. Everything was virtual. And so, yeah, I could look across the screen and see everybody holding my book for the screenshot or whatever. But it's not like I was walking around the streets and people were like, oh, I read your book. Hi. It's like we're all masked up. I didn't get any of that. I didn't get any of that satisfaction. So I developed tremendous insecurity. I was like, oh my God, nobody read my book. I should just go write another one. And then my dad was in the hospital with COVID, and I was talking to our author from the first book, or my contributing author from the first book. I said, Sarah, we should write another book. She said, what's it going to be about? I said, I have no clue, but let's just start writing. And we wrote and we wrote and we wrote and we wrote. And months and months and months later, by the end of 2021, we had been writing for tons of months and we had no clear direction. And Sarah's dad passed away in December of 2021. And she said, I can't write this book with you anymore. It's like, oh, fuck. I just invested all this time, all this money, all this research, all this equipment, whatever. Now I'm sitting there with 80,000 words of gibberish in my hand. What do I do now? Well, in that moment, I started going batshit insane. I started crumbling around the weight of the company and the potential for us to scale, the weight of this death and the weight of that and the weight of this and the weight of holding 80,000 words in my hand and not knowing what to do with it. Well, it all came crashing down as we were recording record profits and record this and record that. Thursday, December 30th, 2021 at 4:30 p.m. I get on the call with one of my clients and she says, dude, you look miserable. Do you want to end our call early? I was like, sure, Lisa. That's odd. No client's ever done that to me, but yeah, let's end our call early. Later that night, I'd go out to dinner with my girlfriend, Molly. And push comes to shove. I drank too much. Her and I get in a fight that I instigated. I get home and feel like a complete fraud, an imposter, misunderstood, not seen, not heard, like a damn asshole. And I take out a kitchen knife and I go straight to my arm. I didn't want to end my life. It's called non-suicidal self-injury. I was screaming out in pain. The only problem was I flew a little bit too close to the sun. I almost didn't make it out. And for the days after, for the weeks after, I cried all day. I was looking around for answers. I was on the phone with my buddy Scott, the guy who doesn't refer me business. But he's coming over in the morning. We're going out on a date at 4:45 p.m. to the hot new Italian restaurant in Brooklyn. Anyways, I get on the phone with him as well as get on the phone with tons of my other friends. But I get on the phone with Scott and he said, I was like, dude, I'm just like, I'm in a like emotional pile of mush. I'm so miserable right now. He's like, dude, you got so many things going on. You just couldn't see the clearing through the forest. Just take a step back. Just chill out. See what you learn. See what came up. Take it slow. Just take a chill pill. And immediately I was like, oh shit, Scott, I got to hang up. I got to record a video. I got to go write. And what happened was that episode of non-suicidal self-injury, literally from the moment I hang up with Scott, I went and wrote the 30-page introduction to my book. And it gave my book a direction, which had been directionless for 10 months. And for that, I'm grateful. See, this non-suicidal self-injury and the empathy and compassion and now material gain and faith in people and life purpose and direction and all these things that it gave me cutting myself and almost not making it out alive, is going to end up being one of the best, most pivotal moments of my life. And that's the learning lesson, is that when life is good, there's like, it's bullshit. There's no incentive to grow or learn or connect. Everything's floating. Hey, everything's good. I don't believe in that stuff. I believe in letting life turn to absolute shit and finding the positive benefits through it. What'd you learn? How'd you persevere? Use that to develop self-confidence needed to get through your next trying times. See, life, being pretty is a new thing in human history. For most of human history, life was a form of suffering, and the quality of your life was determinant on how you got through the obstacles in your life. The ancient Stoics believed it. Ryan Holiday and Mark Manson and Oliver Berkman and all these modern writers believe it. But somewhere along the way, the self-help industry of the 1980s, 1990s, they all crammed down this like power of, yeah, let's clear our limiting beliefs and manifest our destiny and, pretend like our life's perfect. I'm grateful for the sun. That shit is literally bullshit. It's bullshit. And so we wrote the book that's kind of counterculture to that.
It's good. That's good stuff, man. I'm going to go because you have books in the background, and you've written a number of books. Like, a lot of your business is around communicating and so forth. I'm going to share a couple books that have been kind of part of my past last year or so, maybe 2 years. One is I think it's called Courage is Calling by Ryan Holiday, which have you had a chance to check that out?
I haven't, but it's, well, ego is the enemy, obstacle is the way, daily stoic is on my desk.
Yeah. So that was pretty important book that a friend gave me. Actually a client gave me last fall, and that was very helpful at making, forcing me to think through some hard decisions and hard choices and some struggles and things. Prior to that, I read a book called Lincoln the Unknown. Have you heard of this book at all, Chris?
Lincoln the Unknown.
So it's written by Dale Carnegie, who wrote How to Win Friends and Influence People, which everyone knows that book. But this book about Lincoln is phenomenal. Like it is awesome.
From pauper to president.
So is that what the caption below it or something? Yeah. Lincoln the Unknown by Dale Carnegie. So anyway, it's interesting because I think we know that Lincoln went through hard times, like Civil War, but we don't, and we think of him as the greatest president ever. Like, I think generally speaking, like if you were to ask who was the greatest president, like many people would answer Lincoln. Maybe George Washington would be up there, but anyway, Lincoln is high on that list, And so you think he's just like this strong guy, and in many ways he is. But he struggled with mental illness. He struggled with, they took knives from him because they were afraid he's going to take his own life. Mary Todd was a vicious, mean woman that I had never had a clue. And in many ways, the book makes a case that if Mary Todd, because she said she said something like, she's going to marry the man who becomes the president of the United States. And what she sort of meant was not the man that's going to be, but the man that she's going to make be, And so there's a case that, like, without Mary Todd and kind of who she was, we wouldn't have had Lincoln be in the spot that he was in. And had he not experienced the pain of being married to her, that he wouldn't have had the gumption or the track record of going through this painful experience to be able to lead the United States in the way that he did. And I don't know, it's really, really good book. And I'm very surprised. I've never come across anyone who's read it.
And I mean, it actually looks like not many people have read it. it's a it looks like a very underrated or appreciated book.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. It is phenomenal.
Well, I just bought it.
And actually the first part of that book, at least the one I have, I think there's probably different versions. The one I read, it talked about how he was in, Dale Carnegie was like over in Europe, he traveling or something. He was working on writing this book, and he wrote for 2 years, I think. And then he just felt like it was crap, and he scrapped it all. And he then moved to Illinois and visited the places where Lincoln lived, and used that as inspiration to then start over. And so he wrote this book after he'd already spent 2 years trying to write it. And I thought that was pretty cool, the willingness to throw away something and start over when you feel like it just isn't working, you know? So anyway, there's a lot of stuff there. I don't know. I think you'd love the book.
I just ordered it.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
If we get a chance to reconnect, I'd love to get your take, because I literally haven't been able to talk to anyone about it. Like no one's, not that I know of anyone I've told. I don't know that anyone's read it. So it'd be cool to talk about it. But yeah, so
it's the link between like that and gratitude is worth noting that Lincoln went through bad shit in life. He had like, I guess, an abusive wife, or like a tough wife. He went through, he was just like a small town kid, and he like failed. I feel like he lost every election he ever was in until this like monumental swing to like, I don't know, becoming president. Like he just lost for like 40 years straight or something. Yeah. So that would crush most people. And that's what happens when you don't use your trials and tribulations as learning opportunities. When trauma happens in life, loss, fear, failure, shame, regret, whatever, it usually causes a ton of stress, post-traumatic stress. And when I say trauma, I mean everything as small as stubbing your toe to as large as like surviving a war, right? Trauma is trauma. It's relative to different people. Different people have different tolerances, but trauma is trauma. And so you can either react to an event in your life and have it cause chaos and stress, or you can react using a strategy and create growth and opportunity. And we believe that gratitude is that tool. There was a researcher named Philip Watkins out of Eastern Washington University, and he did a study with a few hundred people, splitting the group up into 3 different groups. First was the control group, where he would ask people just to write about anything in life and just, I don't know, study their emotions. The second group, he had them recollect a negative autobiographical experience from their past, something that was like, it was an open memory, it was unprocessed, it was super chaotic, it was abrasive, and write about it. And then the third group, which was recollect, write about it, find the positive benefits, give gratitude to it. So the first group obviously was just the control group. They just, I don't know, wrote about twinkles. Yep. The second group, they found that just writing about, and then science would show that also talking about a negative memory from your past helps destigmatize the negative emotion by organizing it. You look on the paper, you're like, oh, that wasn't so bad. And then like, it's a good thing. But what he found is that the third part was the most beneficial. So how do you not just write about a negative memory to destigmatize the negative emotion, but actually then find the positive benefits from it? So let me give you an example. Someone might have a really negative response, a really negative memory about someone dying or committing suicide, or something happening to them traumatic when they were young. They might normally focus on the negative pain associated with that tragedy or death or fear or shame or emotion. But if they actually look at their life, because that happened at a young age, for instance, they had to learn different things, and those things actually helped them get ahead. So maybe they had greater empathy for others because they know what it feels like to have loss. Maybe it brought together their family and they had a tight-knit family that they would have never had without that loss. Maybe they actually got to write about that story and receive material gain and a lifestyle change. So when you can actually find positive benefits and give gratitude to it and make it part of your life story, it turns into post-traumatic growth. Me looking at a scar to this day on my arm, I could still be in the withdrawals and embarrassment and shame of non-suicidal self-injury. But instead, I found the positive benefits, made it part of my story, made it the introduction to my book, spoke about it on huge stages, made a lot of money around it, and it became one of the best things that ever happened to us. We created something in our book called the Positive Benefits Checklist. So if you're reading this and you're saying, well, how the heck do we even get started on finding positive benefits from a negative autobiographical experience? We actually went about creating an 11-point checklist that if you read our book and you literally just go to this section in the book and it teaches you how to literally put that negative experience into a sentence in the book, and then you check off what are the positive benefits that you've received as a result of that experience: empathy, acceptance, appreciation, family closeness, community closeness, faith in people, compassion, positive self-view, lifestyle change, self-efficacy. And you can score that event on a scale of 0 to 11. Some people might just score 3 out of 11 on stubbing their toe. Some people might do 8 out of 11 on the death of a loved one. So trauma is relative, but if you can find positive benefits in it, then you can say, I'm grateful that blank occurred. I'm grateful that I stubbed my toe because it taught me blank, 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 and blank. It taught me appreciation, empathy, faith in people, self-efficacy, blah, blah, blah. And if you can do that, then you can use that to process the next negative things that occur to you in life. Because look, let's be honest, life isn't filled with pretty moments. Most of life is complete shit. And if you learn how to process that shit, you can learn to turn it into, some form of positivity, hope, pride, optimism to get through the next further trying times.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think so much of, you think of pandemic, you also just think of social media, you think of the time period we live in. It's really easy to feel alone when in reality, we have a ton of opportunities for connection. It's just how inauthentic they are, or unintentional they are, or just like a part of your normal day.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that loneliness, there's a connection, I think, there around like shame and fear, and all these things that when we keep it hidden and we keep it within, and we're not talking about this, is going back to kind of the three scenarios you're talking about. But if you can bring those to the light and shine a light on them, you can see them for what they really are. And it's kind of like, you're much more afraid of the unknown than you are of the known in many cases, And then by talking with people about it that you trust, that can help you process, whether that's a counselor or a friend or whatever, I always find that perspective is kind of the key to understanding how big of a failure you actually are, like, because on the outside, it's like, it's like, people similar to your friend, Scott, he said, well, you just need to take a breath, like slow down a bit. Like, you got a ton of great stuff going on, and, I think too often we compare ourselves to others instead of just comparing ourselves to ourselves or who we were yesterday. I don't know if you're familiar with Jordan Peterson at all.
Yeah.
But he talks a little bit about that. He's like, I think the way he says it's pretty funny. I think he says something like, we compare ourselves to Jim or whatever, and we think Jim has it all together and Jim's great, but maybe Jim, I think the way he says it, he's like, does too much cocaine. So I'm just like, that's an interesting reference point, but he does this or he struggles with that. But we think we know Jim. Well, we don't actually know Jim. We just see the outside of Jim and we compare. It's and my friend Brady, co-founder with Brett as well. He talks about how we compare our blooper reel to other people's highlight reels.
Yeah.
And so it's like who we need to compare. I think comparison is okay, but in many ways it needs to be to something we know really well, which is who we were yesterday. Say, how do I be better than I was yesterday, incrementally, like not way better, just like how do I improve, and I'm going to have some failures. And also it means like if I'm comparing myself to how I was yesterday, if 2 days earlier I was great and yesterday I was in a bad place, like I'm still comparing myself to yesterday, which means I'm moving beyond that. I'm not comparing myself to how great I felt a week ago or 2 days ago or whatever. But I do think perspective. I talk to a lot of people about mentorship and how important it is in my life. And mine's always just like, I just have like that tribe of mentors kind of mentality. It's like I got 3 or 4 people that I would go to and share my pain, share what I'm going through. And they can help me in that, by shining a light on it and saying, hey, actually, this is okay. Like I've struggled with this too, or I went through this hard time. And actually, after I kept pushing through, things got better, and I think when you lose hope in the future, is where real darkness sets in,
Yeah. It's look, darkness is one of my greatest gifts. My ability to sit with my darkness is where I find my creativity. It's where I find empathy and connection to others. But the ability to be grateful for it and use that as a smile or a source of pride or a source of, connection, I think is even better. And that's what we try to write about. I could have done a better job writing this book. I think it's a good book. I could have been deeper. I could have told better, deeper stories. But that'll come out in section edition 2, edition 3. We'll really streamline the principles behind it. You asked me, years from now when we've long passed on, what will people look back and remember about this book? I think it's 2 things. One is that, we always say to be grateful is to be grateful to someone. Most people, I think right now, or not most people, but a lot of people right now are just using gratitude to be grateful for things or events. I'm grateful for my health. I'm grateful for the sun. I'm grateful for this food. When in reality, you should be grateful for the people behind the food, behind the good weather. I don't be grateful for the good weather. Be grateful for your team that allows you to take 30 minutes off for lunch to go sit on your rooftop to enjoy the good weather. Don't be grateful for your health. Be grateful for your transcendental meditation teacher and the Modo yoga teacher that helped you lose 34 pounds in 6 months. I think that the pro-social nature of gratitude that we teach about in this book as a solution to get through hard times is something that will be remembered. And then the second thing that, and I think the main thing that people will remember is that while all the self-help industry is saying, hey, let's help people give gratitude to the positive things and the flower and the attitude of gratitude and the woo, woo, woo. I'm like, literally, let me help you give gratitude being abused as a kid. Let me help you give gratitude to your greatest life regrets. Let me help you give gratitude to that person who literally called you an utter and dismal failure. Because that helps you process things a lot more impactfully than just focusing in on the ooey gooey positive.
Yeah. No, that's really, really good. So we'll maybe start trending towards closure, but we have some time if you have some time. So, I want to maybe go to like, I mean, a book is a product at some level, but it's also kind of a heart at the same time, So it's hard for me to call it a product, but it's something you made and you sell and you derive, business value out of and hopefully it's giving to people more than what they gave to get it, you know, kind of thing. What would be like three things, and it doesn't have to be three, but I'll just pick three, like three things, you know, maybe tips that you would give someone if they're making something in such a way that it can stand out, right? So what I'm thinking here is like the purpose of our time together is, you know, you stood out to me, your book that I read stood out to me. The event I went to stood out. Like you're a standouts type guy. So for those that might be tuning in and just checking this out, like I would love to hear your perspective on, you know, what do you think it takes to stand out? What are the things that you got to kind of think about or remember, keep in mind, you know, if there's three things, if there's one thing, I just think that'd be a cool way to kind of start towards a wrap up.
That's a good question.
I'm always comfortable with pauses, by the way. Other people, like sometimes they're like, got to fill every void. And I'm like, man, if someone asks me a question, I don't know. I'm like, I'm gonna think. So
here's, by the way, people should literally read my friend Dory Clark's book called Stand Out.
nice.
How to find your breakthrough idea and build a following around it. She also wrote a book called The Long Game, which just became a Wall Street Journal bestseller. She is, I believe Marshall Goldsmith's M100 program calls her the #1 communications coach in the world right now. She teaches at Duke. She's a great writer and speaker and author. And so she'd be able to answer that a lot better than I would. But I want to tell you a story of my buddy Alex, who wrote a wonderful, wonderful book called The Third Door, which is a really, really good book. His editor and ghostwriter was also a friend of mine named Cal Fussman, and they had a lot of help from this guy named Larry King. But when Alex was a sophomore in college, he was really fidgety, and he realized that he wasn't learning everything he needed to learn at college in California. He realized he had a lot more to learn that college couldn't teach him. And so he started reading all these books, and this book on entrepreneurship, this book on leadership, this book on this book on this, but nothing was really, satisfying his itch. He was laying down in his bed in his dorm room one night, and he said, you know what book I want to read? I want to read a book about how some of the most successful people on the planet got their start. Like, what was that starting moment like? And he went to the Amazon, or he went to the bookshelf, and he could find no book like that anywhere. And he said, I'm going to go on and write that book. So one night he stayed up all night studying. This was during final exam week in college. He stayed up all night studying, not for his final exam, but he studied how to hack The Price is Right. And the next day after his all-nighter, he went on The Price is Right. He won a $30,000 sailboat, which funded his mission to start traveling around, tracking down the world's most successful people and asking them how they got their start. Bill Gates, Lady Gaga, Warren Buffett, the list goes on. And, at the age of 19, you got this kid who's hacking his way into Warren Buffett's thing and getting a meeting with Bill Gates and doing this and doing that, all these crazy ass stuff. And one day he says, well, if I'm going to track down the world's most successful people, I should probably, like Josh, have a mentor. And so he went online and he saw that there was this cool guy named Elliot. And Elliot Bisnow had started a company called Summit Series, which took a lot of young entrepreneurs onto ships, 5,000 kids at a time, to just connect for a week for a leadership summit. I've gone to those through the years. They're great. And they literally take over a cruise ship with young entrepreneurs, and we just party and connect and talk and do business for a week. It's amazing. But Alex said, Elliot, I want you to be my mentor. Elliot said, good, show up at this conference at this specific time and come have lunch with me. Well, Elliot took Alex out to lunch with 3 of Elliot's friends, 3 really successful entrepreneurs. And, they kept asking Alex, a question or two. And Alex said, yeah, my mission is to help people go out and help leaders tell the story of how the most successful people got to where they are today, how they got their start. And these guys at lunch just looked completely bored. I mean, at one point, they all 3 stood up and left the table to go take phone calls. And Elliot jabs Alex in the ribs and says, what are you doing, Alex? Alex said, I'm trying to share my mission. I'm trying to tell him what I'm about to go do, the book I want to write. He said, no one cares about your mission. Everybody's got some kind of mission. Tell them your story. That's the only unique thing you got going. Tell them how you stayed up all night, how you hacked the prices right, how you flunked out of school, how you defied your parents. Tell them that story. Tell them how you crawled up to get into Warren Buffett, whatever. The guys came back. Alex told a story. They said, we want to hear more. We want to hear more. Anyways, so the moral of the story of how to stand out is tell your story. It's the only actual unique thing you got going. If you're trying to stand out by saying, I'm on a mission to help 84 entrepreneurs do blah, blah, blah by the end of the year, like, it's bullshit. Everybody can just say that. But your story is the only thing that really is going to keep people attached. And by the way, Kurt Vonnegut is a science fiction writer, a great writer through the years. And in the 1950s and 60s, he did a study about what helps a story stand out, what actually helps a movie, a play, a book, by the numbers, be the most successful narratives. And what he found that essentially books and movies and TVs can follow one of 6 emotional arcs. You've got the Cinderella story, you got the boy meets girl story, you got the man in the hole story, you got all these different arcs. And what he found made audiences fall in love with a narrative, help a narrative stand out the most, help them sell tickets, sell books, sell whatever, was the man in the hole story, where a protagonist is going along and then he falls into a hole and then he comes out and he's better than ever before. The audience falls in love with the protagonist when he's down in the trench and he communicates a vulnerable part of their story that the audience can relate to. And then once they get out of that trench, the audience is just rooting for this motherfucker to succeed. Bam! Binghamton University did a study of thousands of movies on Box Office Mojo and found that the man in the hole theory, emotional arc, is literally pound for pound the most successful box office numbers narrative in the history of cinema, by far. So how do you want to stand out? Communicate your story, but communicate the vulnerable parts of it to make the audience fall in love with you, your brand, your mission, your message, your products, your services, and then take them to all new heights. Look, Google did a study called the Promotion to Emotion study that found that buyers with a strong emotional tie to your story or brand are 5 times more likely to consider purchasing, 13 times more likely to actually purchase, and 30 times more likely to pay a premium. That's all we want, right? For our goods and services to be valued at a premium, all it takes is you communicating your story, getting vulnerable about it, and creating emotional connection with those you're trying to sell to. That's it.
That's it. Done. Okay.
I think we write about that in the book too.
See you later.
Bye.
No, that is awesome. So I'm so glad that you brought that up.
Which part? Because I rambled for a bit.
Specifically the man in the hole, because this concept's been on my mind the last probably 6 months, a little bit, because I've told friends of mine my favorite movies have an invention montage. So like, or that's kind of the concept. So and I haven't been able to pin it down, but it is the man in the hole story. Those are my favorite by far. So you have Sandlot. You have this montage where they're trying to like get the ball back and like figure it out, and the guy's going to be killed by his father because he lost the Babe Ruth ball and all that stuff, right? Shawshank Redemption, which is beloved by so many people, but it is truly my favorite movie. You know, he's stuck in a hole or prison, right? And you just are rooting for the guy, and there's this, you know, all this underlying stuff that's going on. Even though I watched Little Rascals the other day with my boys, and they didn't care about it, but they get their go-kart stolen. This is like the modern-ish.
Oh yeah.
I don't know what all, I mean, Little Rascals.
Yeah, just Little Rascals get their go-kart stolen.
Then
Their clubhouse gets on fire.
Burnt down. Yep.
But it's also Boy Meets Girl.
It does have that too.
Also, so it's a nuance. Because Boy Meets Girl is actually the almost identical narrative, except so Boy Meets Girl goes like this.
Mm-hmm.
Man in the Hole just goes like this. So be careful which ones are. You got to do some research on which ones are which.
No, that's very true. That's very true. Well, for me, the girl part of that movie, I could care less about. The part I love is the fact that they have to make a new go-kart and try to win.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I think the go-kart they had was called the Blur.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. Well, so talk about the kind of the, you know, the invention narrative or whatever. One of the cool examples we use about the man in the hole in actually in our book is the story of Albert Einstein or Thomas Edison, actually. So Thomas Edison, he found himself, I'll actually literally read it from the book, is, oh yeah, It's a Wonderful Life. George Bailey is the man in the hole, right? Steve Jobs became the man in the hole because he was literally fired from Apple, created Next, sold Next to Apple, and then built it into $1 trillion monster. But Thomas Edison, on December 10th, 1914, I believe, or December 14th, 1910, he was sitting at dinner with his family, or he was just sitting at dinner, and his kid runs in and says, Dad, you got to come. All the factories are burning down. This is in like literally New Jersey, right across the river. And he stands up for the table. I think he like finishes his drink or like wipes his mouth, whatever. There's like a famous detail. And he just like walks over to his factories across town. And when he gets to the factories, he sees like 9 different fire companies trying to put out these massive fires. And he looks at his kid and says, hey, son, do you mind going and getting your mom and all her friends? They're not going to want to miss this fire. Probably never see a fire like this ever again. And he was just so calm and cool and collected. And, you know, everybody gets there and they're just like so stressed out. And he's like, whatever, just being chill as shit. So he ends up like 90% of his factories and patents and inventions are like burned in one night. And estimates would show that his like yearly income is what he lost that night, $990,000 in 1910 and 1914. But you know what he did the next day? He went back to work. Like he was in the depths of despair. You can either like get PTSD and like fuck off, or you can just like, I don't know, learn from it and start rebuilding again. Literally within the next couple of years, he was making $10 million a year, a 10x output or input from what he was pre every fucking thing in his life burning down. So it's the idea that like once he communicated that story, or once that story became what he was known for, boy, game on. So just, yeah, good stuff.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
That's awesome. Well, Chris, I love what you've shared. And I really think there's a ton of nuggets for people to take away there. And so much of this core belief that we have, I didn't share this at the beginning. I probably meant to, but with our company name being Only Co, the whole concept is to define someone's only, to help to craft the message that is truly unique to them. And so much of it is contingent on figuring out who these people are behind the scenes that run these companies, what their story is, what their passion is, what their, you know, cultural enemy is personally, and what the company's cultural enemy is, and start to craft that narrative. It says, this is who we are. This is why we exist. This is what we're about. This is how we got here, you know, and story is just a massive part of that, you know.
Huge.
It's massive. So that's really cool. What's cool too is there's an element that at least I was picking up is like, what do you really know? What's authentic about you know, the situation that you might find yourself in? I'm just talking the grander you, is like, you know, your story, you know, like it's naturally authentic because you're not trying to put on someone else's shoes. You know, you're not trying to pretend like you're someone you aren't, because you're just sharing how you got to where you're at today, you know, which means it can't come across anything but authentic, you know, which I think is a super important part of this journey for entrepreneurs and for people who are out there trying to, you know, drive a wedge into the market and say, I want to be a part of it. I want to have a product at the table, you know, is being authentic.
I dig it. I dig it, man. Well, I love what you guys do. You're there for so many people, and it's an honor to be walking this path with you guys. It was a fun conversation.
Yeah, appreciate your time, Chris. Yeah, this is great. So we'll get this this put together and get it reposted. But thanks for everyone for tuning in. Like I said, the point of Standouts as a production only co is just to have cool conversations with cool people and people that stand out, and that you know, I could have this conversation with Chris and it'd just be him and me knowing about it, but now all of you do. So that's a good thing.
Woohoo!
So, cool. Well, let me shut off the live stream and then we'll kind of wrap. Thanks everyone for joining.
Thanks everyone. So fun.
Awesome.
So fun.
Chris, that was great.
Well, thank you for having me on. Boom, boom, boom. That was fun. You're a great question asker. You made me think about some wonderful things I hadn't thought of in years. I can't wait for the Pat Conroy thing. I'm gonna have to send the Pat Conroy and the New Orleans thing to some folks in New Orleans. That I was just there with.
That's cool. That's really cool. Well, congrats on the new book, man. And
Thank you.
I'm gonna chew through that one, and it's good stuff, man. Gratitude.
Go leave an Amazon review. That's the best thing you can do.
Perfect. Cool.
All right, buddy.
We'll do too is we'll in the blog that we write up about this, we'll have a link over where people can do that. That'd be awesome.
Perfect.
Cool.
Sounds good to me, my man. Well, say hi to Brett. I'm gonna go get dinner started. Okay, I'll talk to you guys later.
Sounds good. Thanks, Chris.
See you, buddy.
Yeah.